Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about tomatoes, how to prune them, how to set them up and tying them up so they aren't going crazy all over your garden, and to maximize the space that you have. One of the keys to this is knowing what variety of tomatoes you have. There are two types of tomatoes. One is the indeterminate. These are tomatoes that will continue to grow until they are either cut or topped off where they can't grow any further, or the cold weather cuts them out, freezes them out. So these will continue to vine up and will continue to grow as long as the season allows them, as long as they are healthy plants. These tomatoes would be like your beefsteak tomatoes, your San Marzano. There are many others that are this type. You can check those out online, Google it, it will tell you. So that is indeterminate. The second type is determinate tomatoes. These grow for a determined amount of time. One of those that I have planted this year are the Roma tomatoes. Those are like the pear-shaped paste tomatoes. That variety of tomatoes grows to a certain given height or time frame. Most of the tomatoes come on in fruit all within a short period of time, and then they die off. And that's the end of the tomatoes. There's some benefits to each. One of the benefits for the indeterminate tomato is that you can grow them up and grow them tall and prune them in such a way that you guide them up a vine. Those are my personal favorite just because of how they grow and what you can do with them, as well as their varieties of types of tomatoes. For a determinate tomato, those might be good in a pot or a bucket. I've got some around here that you'll see in different videos where you can grow them for a determinate amount of time and then be done with them. The requirements of soil or depth of soil is a little less than what the indeterminate tomatoes are. So today we're going to get into, particularly with the determinate tomatoes, what I do to keep them off of the ground, to keep them healthy. But secondly, I'll be spending a lot more time with the indeterminate tomatoes. I have two main varieties here in my garden: San Marzano, which is a pear-shaped paste tomato, and a beefsteak type of tomato, the round slicing tomato. So I'll show you that here in a second. I'll show you some of the tools and some tricks, maybe some pointers that will help you out. All right. Okay, here we got some tools for the trade in terms of pruning and tying up tomatoes. One, you got to have your coffee. Number two, I use pruning shears. These need to be sharpened, but they still do the trick. I have a pair of scissors. These are some old kid scissors, but they work for what I need them to do. I use this elastic string made by Cloud City, and I got this via Amazon. This is great stuff to tie up plants with. You see, it is elastic, meaning it moves. It doesn't degrade in the sun. And what I like about using this versus string is if you get a big wind or your plants grow and it presses on your tie up, this will move with it. It will do what elastic bands do. This is super cheap. You can get a whole bunch for very little. Additionally, zip ties. So I use zip ties to attach the 1x2s to the posts, or if you've got bamboo canes or other things. And another thing I've learned to do in using zip ties outdoors, I really like the extreme ties that go in a wide range of temperatures. Some zip ties, when exposed to weather, begin to get brittle, and what you don't want is your stuff to get brittle in the heat of the summer and where you have the most stress upon your poles. So these are the tools for this morning. Box cutter, I was using it for something else, though this could be used to cut some things as well. My preferred method of staking tomatoes. So these are my indeterminate tomatoes, meaning they'll grow until they either die from disease, I top them off, or most likely the cold weather stops them for me here. I usually use 2x2s. They're cheap, they're sturdier than a 1x2, especially in the bottom down there. They'll hold up better. I can leave them, some of these have been in here for a couple seasons already. They're easy to put down in the ground. So this morning what we're gonna do is extend this T-post that I had here from last year as a post for this determinate. This is a San Marzano tomato to grow. You can see that this is almost to the top, just a few inches from the top. This post is probably 4 foot tall already. And if these tomatoes grow as they did last year, they will be, shoot, I've had them 10, 12 feet high already. So we need further stakes on here to support their growth. All right, I got these attached. You'll see maybe 2 feet or so down here. One zip tie there, one zip tied there. I try to cut these off because they sometimes get in the way of plant growing, and you see those are up there, probably 10 foot. Try to put it on the side of my T-post so it is pretty sturdy. If I put it on this side, you see these notches for fencing, it wouldn't ride really flat. On this side it will ride really flat, and I try to put it in such a way that it's not interfering with the tomato plant. So let's talk for a minute. Why would you want to stake up your tomatoes? Why would someone want to stake up indeterminate tomatoes? Why not just let them grow how they want to grow? Well, you can do that. If you've got the space and you got ways to tend to them, you can. Tomatoes will, especially like your indeterminate tomatoes, will have things called suckers that will grow out from the main stem and almost produce an entirely different plant. They will flower, they will produce fruit, but they will also limit the height of your plant. They will make your plant much wider, and can become a challenge to manage and to make sure it's got enough feed and resources, fertilizer, to grow and produce what you need to produce. Additionally, as I said before, is the issue of space. So this bed behind me over my left shoulder is 16 feet by about 1.5 feet wide. I have 24 tomato plants in there. That's pushing it in terms of size. I don't have a ton of space here of which to just grow and spread things out. I'm not on a farm. My neighbor's fence is right there, and I have an old pool right here, and I got a narrow band to grow in. So some of you may be challenged with that. You don't have a whole lot of space. This is a way to grow tomatoes in a way to maximize space and maximize the amount of tomatoes that you can grow and care for. So what they do is they grow up the poles. I tie them off so that they are secure. I'll prune them. I'll show you here in just a second what gets pruned. I'll also show you a mistake that I've done and maybe a way to correct it. As well, another thing that is helpful, tomatoes are susceptible to diseases. One of those is blight, different blights. It will come on the leaves and cause them to get diseased, and it will work its way up the plant, and left untreated, it will kill the plant. I've had that on in my other home really bad. Didn't quite know how to treat it. I thought at first it was just an absence of water, just need more water, and it just made things worse. And I had to do some research and understand what was going on. Staking them up and pruning them up helped tremendously to eliminate a lot of that issue with tomato plants. So this is why I choose this. Plus, you know, like, I think it looks kind of cool, to be honest, to be able to grow tomatoes 8, 10, 12 feet tall and have the plants look nice and have tomatoes all the way along, I think it looks pretty cool. In addition to poles this year, and you'll see in my garden tour video, I added some arbors across a couple of my boxes this year. So next, let's go look at how to prune these bad boys. All right, here's a tomato I have kind of set by itself. It is a Sweet 100 small fruited tomato, kind of like a cherry tomato. And this is said to be indeterminate, meaning it'll continue to grow. And with it, I want it to grow up my pole here and to be able to tie it off. Again, I don't want it to grow wide because, as you see right over here, is basil. Here I got a pepper plant. Got some other stuff up here. I just don't have the width to do it. I got plenty of altitude, but not the breadth. So I want things to grow up. Now, to do that, you have to remove suckers. So what are suckers? Let's get in here and I'll show you. A lot of times suckers grow at a 45 degree from the main stem. So this is your main stem. Right here is a sucker. So when they're really small, I can just pick them off. You'll be able to determine the difference between the sucker and where your fruit come on. These are the tomatoes, the flowering things. You can just leave them a little bit and you can see what are the flowering nodes that come off and what are suckers. Usually suckers come right at a 45 from a main leaf. So here's another one. Come in here and just remove that off, all right? If we come up here higher, you'll see more. In here, those that are a little bit bigger, I use something to cut them off so I'm not tearing this. Here's another one, another at a 45. This is a sucker. If I leave it, it will become its own plant. It will take energy away from the stem and it'll come way out here. I don't want that. I want to grow them vertically. So I'll come in here and remove that. Up here, you'll see another one right there. Come in here and clip them out. Now what you want to be careful of, and I'll show you in a minute, is you don't cut this part. That part is part of the main stem. If you follow the main stem up, if you cut this part, you'll stop its vertical growth. You'll put all this energy into flowering out and then be done unless there are other growths that you allow to come up here on these beefsteak tomatoes. So here's another one. It's coming off on a 45 from the plant. Here's the main leaf, main stem. Over here is another one as well. So you got two suckers, one here and one here. You see this will become the flowers that you'll get the fruit. This is a main stem, it will keep growing up. So earlier I told you that I've made mistakes in pruning and being in a hurry to do it, and I've got a lot to do. Come along and you might make a mistake and do too much. So here you see main stem, main stem, main stem, main stem. Right here is where I cut off a sucker. You can keep main stem, up, up, up. Flowers for fruiting, main stem, and where's the main stem? I cut it. What's that mean? It means that this tomato plant won't grow any taller unless I allow one of these suckers to continue to grow. So I can make a decision to leave it as is. It will stay this height, focus all its energy in producing the flowers and producing the fruit, and will not grow any further. However, since it's in June, I might want it to continue to grow. So here, I don't know if you can see here, it looks like right there, that might become a sucker. Or what I can do is use that as the new main stem. Or if I look down here further, you'll see, I'll move this, so right there is what would normally be a sucker that I would cut out. But since I capped off the top and I want it to keep growing, I'm gonna allow that to grow. What I'll do is I'll treat that as a new main stem. I'll tie it off, allow it to, tie it up to the stake, allow it to grow all the way up, and that will become the new main stem. So this is another garden bed that I have. I've tried a new one this year, this big rainbow heirloom slicer, another indeterminate tomato. This side is a Brandywine red heirloom, another indeterminate tomato. So this, you'll see, have the metal T-posts that I had put in there, had extra last year. Last year I grew San Marzanos up here, so I started with this cane, this bamboo stick, and got up to that height, but they kept growing, so I added a 1x2 on the back side, and that is probably easily 12 foot. So I'm 6'2", I reach about 8 foot or a little bit more, and that is way up there. Last year those tomatoes went way up over the top, 12 foot, and I had to top them to keep them from continuing to grow. It was amazing, their growth. So you'll see here, you'll see on these, this is a good one to really look at versus my other one. You can really get in here and see them. How I went in here and tied these up. So you see the string down there at the bottom as it grew, another one here, another one here, and you can see by this elastic, I can move it. It holds so the tomato plant won't fall, but it's not gonna cut. It's not gonna cut into the tomato stem. Very important. You see it here. Now it's time to come up here and do some more stemming. And over here you see the same thing on this Brandywine. If you can look in here, there's one there, another one there, another one there. What I tried to do, not always successful, what I tried to do is just above, where the fruiting nodes come out, just do the tie off there. Sometimes you can't get them at that point, but that's a good place to put it if you can. It will help. It will help support your tomatoes. I talked earlier about indeterminate tomatoes. Now let's talk about determinate tomatoes. So I've got 3 plants here of determinate tomatoes. They are Roma tomatoes on the back side of these raspberry bushes. The same thing. So these will grow. They might get a little bit taller than this, but you see all these flowers on here, all the blooms starting to come in. They'll come in basically or very closely to the same time. And these tomatoes will be much more bushy, or I will allow them to get bushier than these determinate tomatoes. Why? It's because all the side shoots will produce the fruit, and they only will produce for a determinate amount of time. So I want to maximize my yield, maximize the amount of tomatoes. However, they can become really hard to manage. If you've used tomato cages, you know the struggle of tomato cages wanting to move and bend. I use those for years, and you see a couple over there where the bottoms are all bent up and they get all bent out of shape because of the force and the amount of plant material that's going up there. And it's important for tomatoes that they get air, that things aren't laying on the ground, they get air around stuff. So what I do is I will tie them up. Here you'll see this T-post and you'll see strings. These are, I think, nylon rope here at various heights that go on either side and are tied up down there to that pole, and for this side of tomatoes and on that pole. And what it does, it just helps these tomatoes from falling over, keeps them upright, helps support them during high winds. Like in my area, we had a whole bunch of high wind for days on end, and it helps support them and keep them in a place so they'll be healthy and can produce well for you. One other thing with your indeterminate tomatoes, since you're growing them vertically and you want to have good airflow, and you don't want rain to come, hit your soil, bounce back, and get on your leaves, the different mold spores or blight spores will do that. You want to clean up the foliage that is close to the ground. Usually what I try to do is cut off everything that is below the first, you see here, the first fruiting outpour. So I'll cut this off, get this away. A lot of times down low you'll have like new growth trying to come in there. So I cut that all off. What it does is give plenty of airflow around your plants, get your leaves up from the bottom, keeps pests away, but also cleans up the look and produces more ways in which pollinators can come in and get to your flowers so that you can get the pollination that you need. All right, here's another look into how to clean up your tomatoes from the ground up. You see this brandywine tomato, main stem comes up. This is your first fruiting nodule outgrowth, thingamabobber, whatever you want to call it, right? So I want to cut off all the leaves that are below there. That will allow more airflow, have less chance of ground-borne funguses and stuff coming up on my leaves. It will produce more visibility for the pollinators coming in that we want to access the flowers to pollinate them to turn them into tomatoes. Additionally, just outside of the view here are some of the Roma determinate tomatoes. Now, I don't want to come back. I don't prune those near as drastically, but I do see some leaves on the ground and against the sides of the box. I want to prune that out so more airflow can come in, pollinators can come in, and less disease can come in. All right, y'all, I hope this was beneficial to you. Hope it gives you some pointers, some tips, some different ways that you can engage with your tomatoes to take care of them, to prune them, to grow them as well. Maybe it would inspire you to try something different, ways in which you can trestle up or tie up your tomatoes, different tools, different tricks that are there. If you have any questions or have some challenges that you have related to this, please shoot them in the comments. Let me know, and I'd be happy to help any way that I can, as I'm on the journey as well to learn and gain insight and become a better gardener, and most importantly, grow food to feed my family that is good, nutritious, organic, and cost less, right? All right, I hope you have a great day. Enjoy as you get out and garden.